Hey, Ron Newcomb here, the indie coach, and we are here with several of my new friends, part of the Group Two Entertainment. What should I call you? The foursome we have here. A lot of experience, a lot of history. It appears with the company. You've been around a long time. It seems to have a lot of filmography from each of you, and I would love to just kind of dive into a little bit of background, if you wouldn't mind, just to give context to the listeners about what you all do and kind of a little bit of your history and what each of you have done. And if you don't mind, we can go to the ladies first. Katya, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, of course. Well, nice to meet you,
Yeah.
Ron. Yeah, well, Christine and I have been working with Richard and Craig through G2E for the past few years. Um, G2E itself is a consulting company, which is a subsidiary of our of a Mixer, which is a film finance and sales company, which pretty much greenlights and finances independent films. And what we do through or what we've learned throughout the years in consulting is basically to identify which packages, really speak to good content or have traction to move forward. A lot of stuff that we get usually isn't fully packaged yet. There's only bits and pieces, whether, it's a script but no budget or vice versa or whatnot. But really what we do through G2E is help um, guide clients to developing their packages right. So whether it's, writing a thoughtful budget that makes sense to the production that the script's supposed to, reflect, or helping onboard experienced producers to their projects to help them actually execute it correctly and to the vision supposed to be. That's just some of the services that we provide through G2E. And, every case is different, every package is different. And, that's what makes it exciting every day to look at new stuff. So,
Yeah, that's part of the film industry, right? It's creative, it's new, and it's constantly changing. Christina, can I kick it over to you to just talk a little bit about introducing yourself, but your background and experience?
Yes, my name is Cristina Sereneta. I've been working in the industry for the past almost 20 years. Let's go put this way. I have done a lot of work as a product placement consulting for a lot of major production company, for producers, and through that, I was able to work with a lot of creative professionals in the industry. And my part over here on G2E is to help to outsource and bring in the best projects possible that we can have the best content, the best producers, and not just has to be just the best, but also guide the newcomers, the people who doesn't know how to get through the production aspect and financing, because every single project is different. A lot of producers have a lot of experience on the field. We work with many of them, but few of them don't have the ability to get the project in a place where it's ready to present to financing.
Yeah.
And that's our job over here to guide them and help them to package the project with the right talents, with the right, producers, directors, and in order to have a successful project for financing.
No, that's great. I definitely appreciate that. And yes, I believe that is much needed. Richard, can I send it over to you, sir?
Sure. I think, yeah. So I come from a pretty diverse background. I started in the boxing business and I was in the music business for a long time. I represented Michael Jackson for 10 years. I was on Cheryl Crow's management team for seven. I managed a lot of world champion fighters, and from that I got in the television side of the business in the kind of mid to late '80s with Don King, selling all the big fights overseas. Got involved in financing films in the very early '90s and had a lot of success early on with Hoffa and State of Grace and a bunch of other films, and kind of went in and out of that. And now that's all we do full time. So I learned how to raise capital on the institutional side when I represented Michael. and we worked with a lot of Wall Street investment banks. I was able to leverage the Beatles catalog and the MyJack catalog against some substantial loans for him. And I've been a director of a couple public companies, one in the television business. And so I sold my bigger company back in the 90s. We pieced part of it off to Viacom. So I'm really on a capital. I really raise capital, but the finance side of films is the only side of the business I've ever been in. But I understand all the other components really well. We've sourced, probably 7,500 film packages, and so I'm budget conscious. We've our bigger company, the parent company, has a group of partners that together have financed and sold and produced and our new partner on a studio level, 350 films.
Awesome.
So we always, again, as from the earlier conversation, we always are incredibly conscious about production values and lining the right talent up. And so that's what we do. We raise money in increments of $100 and $200 million and then put it to work. And the models that we created, I believe, are the best in the indie business, or even on the studio level, because they mitigate risk better than anybody out there. Our investors, our institutional capital providers, are involved in the financing of the entire film. They get the interest on the debt, the gap, the equity. They get their back end points, but they also get percentages of gross sales, which mitigates the risk down to levels that nobody can provide. We're incredibly careful about the choices we make. The bigger group, the board of directors on that bigger group, is the group that is responsible for greenlighting the films. Most of the films we finance are internal. They're done basically through the partners. The Group 2 Entertainment is a subsidiary of that, and that's the company that gives new people chances to line up. And I think that's where Craig can be really helpful in what he's going to say, because it all starts with the girls seeing everything. And once it gets to that point, like I mentioned in my notes, then Craig and I kind of, when we have something that we want to move forward on, that's really what Craig and I do together. We're working together on, I don't know, Craig, how many live action films do we have right now that are on the move, that are going to be casting? We have a bunch.
That's awesome.
So Craig is such a valuable component to what we do here, because without him, I would be completely lost. So we have this really fluid model, and everything starts with Kati and Christy, and then it kind of works its way to us, and then back to them. And there's a lot of consensus decisions being made, and it's really functional. But I do understand how hard it is to get a film financed.
Yeah.
We had a big meeting yesterday with all our big partners. Craig was on it. Craig is very close with a lot of these guys. Our partners in London are super smart people. Daniel Diamond has been doing foreign sales for 40 years. Michael Tadros is a legendary Hollywood producer. Was supervising producer at Warner, and always at big studios. Forrest Gump, Die Hard with a Vengeance. He produced Ocean's 8, Hitch, I Am Legend. So that helps us make good choices. And so again, everything on a production standpoint, you're not going to have the top of the line cameras on an $8 million film like you are on a $40 million film.
Yeah.
But we strive to get that below the line costs to look like it is a film, because everything that we do is theatrical first. So everything is a theatrical release first. I want to kind of touch on this when Craig is done, because a lot of these new clients come in and they just, I wrote a script, so I should get $10 million. Right?
Of course.
And there's so much more to that. Having a capable producer and director, line producer that a completion bond company will check off on, being able to get A-list talent is so challenging. So it's a lot. It's just very misguided in so many ways. And I try not to debate with people, because it's just kind of it becomes a waste of time. Everyone wants to tell us how this works. And we have, 100, 200 years of experience between 5 of us. Right? So,
yeah, you might know
it's a little challenging to be told how this works when we're pretty capable. So I think it's just best for Craig to kind of give you his background so you can get a better feel of, how he sees things too.
I love that. Craig, I'll throw it over to you, sir.
Well, I I started out actually building cameras for Panavision and General Camera Corporation, excuse me, and then worked on a project called the Panaglide, which introduced the industry to what a lot of people think is a Steadicam.
Yeah.
And I worked for, oh God, Francis Ford Coppola, Penny Marshall, did multiple movies for everybody. And the idea was to actually put it on the screen. You'd sit there with Alan Pakula. I worked with John Huston, and they would tell you what they were envisioning, and you actually had to put it on the screen for them. So I actually got behind the camera and did all those shots. I've worked on over 75 major motion pictures. That
Wow.
back, as I say, 50 years, and all the way up to the present. Nora Ephron. Top directors would always want to have you do their movies. And the idea is to actually get, I mean, like when you worked with John Huston, he'd tell you a little story about the scene and what he wanted to get across. And then you actually figure out how to give him the pieces that when he put them together in the puzzle could make that movie. And it was really helpful. I'm Francis, great storyteller. And you wouldn't just walk out and just set up shots. He would tell you what he was thinking, how it fit into the movie. And your education from these people, I was very lucky. I started very young and was able to work with icons in the industry. I did Die Hard with a Vengeance and The
Cool.
Last Godfather, Bronx Tale, Carlito's
Awesome.
Way, um, Mirror Has Two Faces with Barbara Streisand, um, League of Their Own. I could go on, but it
That's
gets
awesome.
boring. But that's really what it comes down to is you have to deliver for them, and that's why they call you.
Sure.
Um, this is not a business where you say, okay, who's the next guy available? The idea is they would actually plot their time around when you were available to be able to do that. And I remember one time I had just built the camera, and Bob Gottschalk was the president of Panavision, and he gave my phone number to Clint Eastwood, but didn't tell me. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, I was in my probably 27, and I get a phone call about 1 in the morning. I said, "Who's this?" He says, "Clint." I said, "Clint who?" He goes, "Clint Eastwood." I just hung up, and he called right back. He goes, "Did Mr. Gottschalk tell you I was going to call you?" I go, "Oh no, Mr. Eastwood, I'm standing up right now. I'm so sorry." He was so cool. He said I would have done the same thing. So it really, it became one of these things where from word of mouth, people would say, "We'll use this camera, but we need this guy."
Yeah.
And you get your reputation is to be able to deliver over and over. Paul Mazursky and Taylor Hackford. I worked for everybody. And the idea is you get to see how different people think things through. So your education growing up becomes totally different because who's exposed to these people and they tell you what they think. And then back in those days, when I first started, there was no video at all. So directors used to sit right under the lens
Yeah.
and you would have to actually tell them what you said. And at the end, I remember when I was doing Bronx Tale, the first time Bob had ever directed anything. I remember the beginning of the movie, there's a time where he goes in, he tells this guy, this Chaz Palminteri, "This is my son." And in the wide shot, I saw something in his face that I didn't see in the close up. And I thought to myself, how am I going to go outside with Robert De Niro and tell him your performance did not match that and it wasn't as good? So I said, "Can I talk to you outside for a second?" And as I'm walking out, I'm thinking of how to word it. And I said, "There was something in your eye that I saw in the wide shot that I didn't see in the close up." And he goes, he went in and he went from like 0 to 100 miles an hour, just like that. That's what great actors can do. And
Yeah.
you learn so much from watching these people do that. I don't
Yeah.
want to bore you.
Now that's how to make a great movie right there. And that's what I'm talking about. And I think that's such a great uh, thing, what Craig just said, because we get so many people. We wrote a script. We really don't have, but we think we know what to do, right? And when you get into these deeper questions, because most of them don't get past our minimum criteria, because we look at a producer and a director. What are their last 5 films? How many screens in the domestic theatrical release did they have? What was the P&A spend? What was the gross budget? And from there, I can figure out if it was a complete disaster. Because as you know, 90% of all the indie films lose money, right?
Yeah.
And the big reason is because very few people, you can call yourself a producer all day long, but that doesn't make you a producer.
Hmm.
And so that's when you have that kind of experience and you can craft out a film, a great film on whatever budget we need is a huge difference. And it's a component that we find is missing so often in what we see with these young kids or people that have even been around for a long time that have never really gotten to that level. And again, we just looked at a bunch of films from a guy. I don't know if you guys saw my notes, Christy, just
Yeah.
recently. I'm not going to mention who it is, but some client came to us with half a dozen films, and we have this and we have that, and nothing makes any sense
Hmm.
to us. There's nobody. They have no talent. They have a producer we know very well who's an Academy Award-winning producer, but it was from a movie that never got to the screen. So we don't even have confidence in that guy.
Hmm.
And there's just so much that goes into getting this right. So when it comes to us and we're thinking, hey, we have the right group of people, they
Hmm.
have the right vision for this film,
Right.
the script is really good, and we can move forward, that's when we start to get serious about financing someone's films. So we really just rely on our legendary Hollywood producer clients and a lot of the stuff internally. We have a very strong presence in the family animated space with our partners in London. We have that 5-film deal with Stanley Universe. The first script is done. We're moving ahead on that. We have a big live action film with Mike Tadros producing, and Craig is intimately involved in that. We have something with Andrew Niederman, who wrote Devil's Advocate. A bunch of his books have been made into movies. That's on the move. We have X Factor in the Jungle with Simon and Larry Kazanoff producing. Larry did True Lies, Dirty Dancing, Terminator 2, all the Mortal Kombat. So when Larry goes out to cast, I just got the new casting list or who he's going out to. The guy's going to cast a movie. When Mike is involved, Mike can call anybody and they'll any actor in the world knows who he is and will take his call and work at a better rate because they want to be with a really veteran producer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of even talking to our foreign sales agent, it's really challenging out there. The pay one windows are choked off again, so we're relying more on a very intelligent P&A spend. We have a group of people that are been out there forever. My partner in London, his first movie was Wild Geese with Richard Burton 49 years ago. This guy's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And all that experience counts. It means something.
Absolutely. Well, you've hit a lot of points there, and one of the things, and I'll ask you, and if you don't mind, and if you can't answer the question, that's no problem. I don't want to give away any secret sauce, but I would mind asking because money is not a problem; it's the problem right now.
Yes,
That's what it seems to be to me.
always a problem.
And de-risking is the key phrase that any investor, because so in the DC market investors don't invest in film traditionally. They invest in medical and tech and all that. And so when I have conversations with them, it's a bit of a glazed look, and they're always talking about de-risk, de-risk, de-risk. And in the film world, that means, and you kind of mentioned it, foreign pre-sales, getting an A-list talent. Those are some things you can do to mitigate. What are you seeing though in that realm of like foreign pre-sales, the foreign market?
Well, we created, our models. That's the way our models line up: a minimum of 25% in the tax credits, a minimum of 33% in the pre-sale. So we know the film is going to have some traction. We have a good idea of what distributors we're going to look to, whether it's a studio distributor or one of the great indie distributors that we work with. We always see way far ahead in the future in every aspect of the film, and so it's again, it gets down to when I run the insurance packages and the completion bond, they're focused on the principal personnel. When we talk to our traditional bankers, because we've structured a separate credit line, just for people that we're not going to fully fund their films for tax credits and pre-sales. The bankers tell us specifically because they're debt providers. They do only collateral loans. So they tell us that they rely on who the producer is, and that's just the way it is. So in the last month, because we see so much deal flow. We got a film from Mark Wahlberg, but they wanted us to be the equity player only in a very low position on the waterfall. His movies make about 38 million non-IP, non-sequel films. It was 28 million. They were paying 22% on the debt, 22% on the equity. We shake that out for about 8% less to our and make our capital providers incredibly happy. There was no reason for us to be involved because it was way too risky. And that's Wahlberg, and Kevin Smith brought us Jay and Silent Bob 3, and we looked at that, and it just wasn't really the way we needed it to line up for us. But so many other people, movies with Mel Gibson, movies with Travolta, we see this constantly. And a lot of them are actually attached. But for the most part, these people have a wish list. They have no ability to get talent. And I think I can give you an example. We saw 2 months ago, we saw a bunch of films come in. Craig is going to laugh at this. So are these guys. So the guy has a $6.2 million budget film with Michael Madsen as a lead. Michael Madsen's good for like $100,000 film. Then he had a $6.8 million film that he with Denzel Washington as the lead, and Denzel's not going to get out of bed for less than 20 million, right? So this guy had no idea what he was doing, but he wants to debate with us on how, and it just got so absurd. I blocked a lot of people's emails. So, because I don't want to go back and forth, because it's the people that are willing to listen and learn. If you have a chance to sit with Craig, you should just only focus on everything that comes out of this man's mouth. So I always tell people that, and this is funny because I always tell people this. I know one part of this business really well, and anything else I stay completely out of, because first of all, I like people to think I'm a little smart, so I'm going to stay in my lane, right? So right. I just don't get it. I don't do that because it just makes no sense. I don't understand. And the girls, as they are known, because they're always together and they're always working together to make people understand, how this works and to better these people that come to us. That you really have to come right in this business. It's the people that end up every once in a while making a movie, it's a financial disaster because they're just not really capable of seeing that whole thing through and doing it right. And it's incredibly challenging even for us. And that's why we created these models. We do these Stan Lee films at 20 million. When Warner Brothers came to us to do the Looney Tunes stuff, to do the sales on the Looney Tunes stuff, they ate $70 million on Acme versus Coyote, which was a big animated film. I forget who the stars were, but even been Jason Sudeikis. And it was a disaster. They wrote it off. They didn't even take it out to the theaters because they were going to lose all their P&A funding, probably another 40, 50 million. And so creating business models that work in today's market, every time there's a slight industry shift or a shift in one of the pay windows or anything, we're on top of that and we're adjusting our models to fit that. We talked about this extensively in our big conference call yesterday. And I think that's the real challenge, to get the point across to people that don't have the experience, that there's a right way and a wrong way. And a lot of people just don't want to listen. And if they had a chance to listen to Craig, or if they take direction from Katya and Christy, they'll be in a much better position. And of course, like no one can afford our fees either. And so, then they tell us, well, you should just do this because, you don't know what you're missing. And, Craig,
of course. Yeah.
They try 800 million. Right.
Yeah.
Because I wrote a script, so I should.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
so Katya and Christy, we source 700 packages a year, which is a substantial amount for a boutique firm.
And may I add something to that, Richard? One of the biggest challenges that we actually have as well is the fact that we get the script. Sometimes the script need a lot of work to be done. And with that also come the changes of the budget. And the budget is probably one of the most critical important element for us to understand, the expendable, how we're going to finance this that specific project. And sometimes we get like package which has talents, a wish list talents, and some of those talents probably they were really big, um, actors back in the days, but they has no value for today market. And we have to educate these, producers that are putting those projects together, that maybe um, John Travolta doesn't have the same value today as he has, like, in the 80s. So we really focus on talents that has a lot of value, that can really help drive sales to the project, because that's one of the way that we can make our business model successful. So we have to educate the producers on that level. You can bring a project with, all the really old actors that we know well, that used to have a lot of value in the 80s and 90s, but for today market they might not. So we need to guide and help them to structure as well who they should be casting for their projects, so we can have a very successful financial project in the market. So that's another element that we
Sure.
really focus on that.
Yeah, I even wonder, with A-list talent, it seems to be changing, and the drive of that talent changes, and the demand. Where do you see kind of the A-list talent at? Is A-list talent as important as it was even 7 years ago? Is
If
it
I may,
still? Yeah, please jump
I
in.
may add on to that. I think A-list talent is always going to be A-list talent. But at the end of the day, the way we do pre-sales is, it's based off of what talent makes sense for what budget and what genre, right? So it's kind of a whole picture whenever a sales agent's looking at it and seeing if they could go out and do this or not for X amount, right?
Right.
And that's the thing. At the end of the day, what we consider an A-lister from our ideology is someone that's had experience that's been relevant for the last few years, have done successful movies at a budget level successfully in comparison to a film that's being presented to us right now. There's a track record of them being good in this role, maybe in a similar film, at least five, maybe
Like
like
take
five.
like take Michael, if we use Michael Cera, say, or somebody like that on a 10 million, $9 million film, because the DGA tier just changed. Put him in a big movie. That's one thing. That's not driven by him. And you put him in an $8 million film. He's not a theatrical release guy. He's a high streamer. Um,
Yeah, that's a big
Josh
thing, right?
Duhamel is a high streamer. Jesse Eisenberg is a high streamer. People like that, they're just not. So when we look at that, we look at actors based on the budget that can get us into the theaters and generate enough box office to get out of P&A and make our money back, and we X out that pay one and pay two window. Or
Yeah.
we take into consideration now that a lot of those are choked out, which we just coming out of Cannes and getting back into Cannes. Everybody's, our other partners pay incredibly close attention to that.
For Katiani and Christina specifically, when you all see a package come in, let's say that you have an audience ready to listen and hear, what would you advise them to do better? What are you seeing that people could improve upon that you just wish they would get right? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
A lot that could potentially come to mind. Imagination is wild. But I think a lot of the times, you know, this is something that a lot of times we see a really great, from what I see a really great high concept story, right, in the script, but it's not delivered right. And that's based off who the writer is. And usually it's someone who's, let's say, a first-time writer, and they're doing really well, but usually a script has to be really good to feel comfortable
Really
enough to
good.
put really good to bring it in front of a talent and have a chance that they want to attach themselves to it, because imagine how many scripts are being flown at their faces, every day. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
And and I don't know if this is something I that's right advice, but I think if someone's a first-time writer, I think they should definitely go for it and try writing. But I think it's always, no matter if you're trying to be a producer, writer, director, whoever it is, have a mentor while you're trying to start something out at first. Have a mentor, maybe learn from them while you're doing your project. Maybe co-work with them, maybe work with another writer on a script if you're first off, just because sometimes it doesn't come back right, and that process of redoing it,
I think
redeveloping
I
it
think
takes a while.
They
But
I
you
need
think
to
Craig,
be
Craig can speak to
open-minded.
that too. I think Craig can speak to that too because he's seen a million scripts and he can tell right away when the script is written. It's not just the dialogue, it's the way the story unfolds. And I think you
The
could speak to that.
characters as well, and also, the new writers need to be open-minded because what they wrote is going to change many,
Yeah.
many, many
Yeah.
times.
So I
So
think I think
always.
Craig can speak to what his experience in that.
me
And it
introduce
was
something to you that Richard will verify. The industry is going through a transformation. For
No doubt.
years, I did movies that were always over $100 million. Um, those movies, the studios realizing a lot of those movies, they didn't make money because if you shot it for a little over $100 million, then you think of the P&A after it. You weren't breaking even until you made $300 million. How many
Yeah.
movies make $300 million?
Right. Not many.
The
Well,
80s, there was this whole idea at the studios. They were actually trying to cast movies with a computer. They thought, oh, the computer will tell us what to do, and then we'll definitely make money. That didn't work either. And
sure.
but I used to say, you really think that's going to work? Oh, yeah, don't worry. And this person will be strong in the South, and this person, because they fed it's only the data that they fed in, and then it would spit out what they thought was going to be a surefire winner. It
There
I did
wasn't.
a movie years ago, great cast. Anthony Hopkins, Brad Pitt, Meet Joe Black, beautiful movie. Um, it was a remake of Death Takes a Holiday. The movie that you have to also think of your audience. That audience you have to be able to go through several different audiences to be able to make a lot of money. And they thought it out that here's a rich guy who meets death, and how many people are going to go see that? There is a group that would see it, but you have different quadrants of audiences, and they weren't reaching all of them. So they said, yeah, but we've got Brad Pitt, we've got Anthony Hopkins. I said, oh, that's great. Well, the studio head who was at the time, he came to me and I said, at maybe $60 million, you've probably been making a lot of money on this movie. And I said, but we had gotten into the $130 million area. And we shot it at the Aldrich Mansion, which was Rockefeller's mother's house up in Newport, Rhode Island. Uh, Most expensive, everything was done. And he said to me, he goes, yeah, what am I going to tell the Japanese, meaning the studio? I said, tell them it's a revenge for Pearl Harbor. Well, to be honest with you, the movie, if you watch it, is a very good movie. But you have to think of it in terms of, is there an audience? What is our target audience? And are we actually reaching them all? And that's what's been lost now. So you're going to see a lot more movies made in a lot cheaper, but with a lot more thinking, and every dollar is going to be thought of. It
Yeah.
wasn't that they would just spend money. I mean, who had the biggest camper? And they'd have arguments. Oh, his camper's bigger than mine. I
Right.
mean, it's crazy. I'm telling you firsthand. I'd be on the set and I go, no, I actually think yours is bigger than that one. Really? You think so? Who cares? No one was going to the box office because he had a camper that went all the way down and a gym attached to it too. And I'm not kidding you. These are not exaggerations. But I remember doing movies early on in my career, like Unmarried Woman, Paul Mazursky, and they were thought out so much better. Then the money got injected into it. And I did a movie, believe it or not, called Ishtar. Remember Ishtar?
Tyson. Yeah.
Okay. Elaine May
That
wrote
was
it.
done at wasn't that done at Kaufman Astoria Studios?
Got it there.
That was.
Built, I mean, some of it was in Morocco, but most of it
Right.
was the nightclub and all was all in the studio. And they just spent money like, I'd say Elaine, um, Dustin and Warren have left the stage because they were singers. And she said, well, just keep rolling. Maybe they'll come back. You're kidding. A buck a foot is the film. I had 6 cameras going 6,000 feet of film.
Oh my
And no
gosh.
one came back on. And you'd hear as the film went through. Well,
Yeah.
that's what was starting to happen. It was like, well, I'll spend more money than them. League of Their Own, I mean, was one of those movies that did make money. And it was because, I mean, Penny was really smart. She got the film and turnaround, and they were trying to remember David Ansbach?
Sure.
You might, right? Yeah, I figured you would. He
Remember, that's the Unitas film. That was the
That's
guy who
right.
did. Right.
He spent $10 million on it, and they were looking at it, Paramount. They go, "This is," they they cut it. They
The whole
ended up
thing.
recasting, brought everyone in, and it was one of those things where you finally had to think about, well, what is this movie? Is it an ensemble cast? Is it about the history of the women playing baseball? And Penny brought in Babalu Mandel and Lowell Gans. Remember the writers that used to do Mork and Mindy and all those shows?
Made it funny.
Fun, exactly. They made it funny and they gave the fun. Well, that's what filmmaking is all about. It's not how much money you spent. People used to say, well, you remember the days when people would say, oh, so and so is in this movie, so I got to go see it. That doesn't happen anymore. No one's going to a movie just because of certain actors in it anymore.
No.
But back in the day, that's what was going on. And it just got out of whack. But it's
Yeah.
not like
Well,
that.
how compelling the story is. It's what we believe the vision of the film cinematically looks like, which is incredibly important to us. Or Craig
Spot on.
wouldn't be sitting if it wasn't so super important to us. Craig wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah.
That's a huge reason that. And when I talk to some other people in the industry at high levels, they're like, "That's really smart."
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like,
Craig, I actually have I'd love to come back to you with a specific question that I ask a lot of people, and I would love to get your thoughts and perspective on this. So I'm 52. I am married and I have 5 kids, all under the age of 14. I'm always trying to find contentment and work-life balance, but I also want to have longevity. Do you have any thoughts about finding contentment in this industry, creating that work-life balance, or how does one find longevity? You've had a 50-year career, you said, and still working, which is awesome. How are you able to do that? Are there any nuggets? I know every story is unique, but it's kind of like you're a little further down the road than me, and what are the breadcrumbs that I might be able to follow? Do you have any thoughts in those arenas?
I can only speak from my own experience. And for me, I decided I want to do movies of all different genres. I
Hmm.
mean, I did action picture. I did Die Hard with a Vengeance. I did Tootsie with, and I took, and I learned from everything. I remember when Sidney Pollack gave me the script, I said, he goes, "What do you think?" And I said, "Who's going to laugh at a man in a dress?" And, these are the kind of things that you learn. And I thought to myself, it's amazing. Then you see an actor like Dustin who, just turned it into something that was fantastic. And we would laugh. I mean, I would laugh behind the camera. I had to think of sad things that happened in my life. So I wouldn't laugh and actually shake the camera. And I remember also too when Andrew he wrote The Devil's Advocate. I was doing that and I was looking at the last reel and I thought to myself, you know something? This is really weird when Keanu Reeves says, "Who are you?" And he goes, "They call me a lot of things. How about dad?" And he's the devil. And I thought, this can't work. And then you start to realize when you're looking through the camera and you're doing something like that, that's what a great actor, I don't care who he is, that's what they bring to the screen. And it works. And if you remember, I don't know if you saw the movie, all of a
Sure.
sudden the music came on. It happened in Monterey a long time ago. And he's dancing around the room. And in the room,
courtroom, right?
yeah, he's got Keanu and his daughter, and he's trying to create the next Antichrist. But again, if you read it on the page, sometimes you say, "I don't see this."
Yeah.
That's what made me start to realize good actors will bring something totally different. And for me, it was one of those things where I just wanted to do all kinds of different movies. The only movie I haven't done is, believe it or not, is a Western. I think that would be fun too. But it's what keeps you going. A new project with a different look completely, where you actually have to create a different look and create a different mood. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the audience and put them in that atmosphere so they can actually feel it. Otherwise, all you're doing is recording it. And
I like
that's
it.
not what cinematography is all about.
No, it's not. No, it's artwork of its own. So I'd love to send this question to Richard and Craig, and then I'm going to send the next question over to Katya and Christina to kind of bring two different perspectives. So the first one is for Richard and Craig. How would you say Hollywood is blowing it? I think the indies give a lot of pushback for Hollywood, but Hollywood does a lot of things right also. But we are in a bit of an upheaval. I think it's hard to deny that. We're in a bit of a transition. So I'd love to know from the gentleman, how do you see Hollywood blowing it? But then I think indies also, we blame other people, and I've seen indies victimize themselves and don't take ownership that actually their film just wasn't that good, particularly the story. It all started from the script. So from the ladies, I'd love your perspective on how do you feel like the indies are blowing it? So, gentlemen, either one of you, any thoughts on how Hollywood is blowing it?
Well,
Go,
for
Richard,
me,
go with the financial
yeah,
side, right?
so it's really simple. I mean, you've got these studios green lighting films that just aren't good. And we have a really sophisticated viewer these days. They're being bombarded with so much information. There's a lot of choices. It takes a lot to get somebody off their ass into the car, drive to the theater, buy the tickets, buy the soda. That's expensive. There's we look at we get a lot of our data from down your way from uh, what do you call it? There's a think tank down there that I've been working with for 25 years, Booz Allen Hamilton. And, they provide data. So you have a family, you have 5 kids, right? So you're a little bit outside that. But so you're going to take your family to a movie and you got kids in a specific grade. What are you going to go see? How much are you going to go spend? You have X amount of discretionary entertainment income dollars per family, and there's a billion choices, right? So it has
Right.
to be good. So they're green lighting films that just aren't good. On the indie side, I've told people so many times till I'm blue in the face, I will sit home and play with my kid before I make a bad decision, and that's it. And we have and we not everything. My fights with the producers all day long are how do we reduce this budget and how do we streamline it? Because you're there. I mean, look at what Warner has done. Joker too. I mean, we just talked to a friend of ours. I'm not going to mention his name. Major Hollywood producer, film, not really a producer, but a finance company. They filed bankruptcy about 15 months ago, destroyed everything, made the worst choices you could possibly make. They had a slate deal with Warner, a slate deal with MGM, total disasters.
Uh,
And well, we have to do this, we have to do that. You don't. And people convince on the indie side, people convince their friends and family or some wealthy guy they know, we have to make this movie, and it's a disaster from the beginning. I have friends who I don't really talk to anymore. They're the ones who bankrupted the Comeback Trail. De Niro, Tommy Lee Jones, Morgan Freeman, 27 million,
uh,
went into filed bankruptcy, burned everybody. George Gallo, the director, put his house up, and it's streaming on Amazon, like for transactional. They lost everything, and that's the decisions. These are decisions that are just bad. When you look also at who's running studios these days, I have a better background than a lot of those people. They're just there. They don't understand. They're out of touch with reality. They think, like Craig said, bigger is better. We should make. How are you making 600 million back on a $200 million movie?
right.
Because you're getting 37 and a half cents on the dollar. If your P&A spend is 100 million,
Right.
right? You need 400 million to get out of P&A. And then now you're paying your debt down and then the equity. So it's so challenging to do it right. We talked about that yesterday between Guy Collins, Daniel Diamond, and Michael Tadros. A big part of the conversation was how difficult it is to do this right. And between us, we have 350 movies that we financed and sold or produced. And Daniel Diamond sold thousands of films. He was the president of what do you call it? Jim Robinson's company back in the day. Uh, the ones that did the ones that did Last of the Mohicans, and
Okay.
Daniel's been around forever. Yeah, Russell Means was my client for that movie. He
Oh,
never acted, and Michael Mann said, "I have to have this guy." That's another
awesome.
funny story.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Russell and I were extremely close for 25 years especially on the civil rights side. But Russell was one of my best friends for years.
Awesome.
But anyway, so it's I think it's just bad decision making and not a good enough knowledge of the industry as a whole and what works and what doesn't work. It's not rocket science, and it just takes. You really have to just in my seat. I have to just make the best decisions only, and because if I don't, nobody will give me money anymore. My investors love me because we've been incredibly successful. Maybe that's luck, but it's also been really good choices. And I think
Yeah,
that's what it boils down to. When we see 700 film packages a year and maybe move on two of them, that says a lot.
does a lot. Absolutely. Ladies, anything you have for how?
Did I say everything right?
I
Honestly,
pretty much said everything, and I feel that some of the independent, you know, projects out there, I
Yeah,
think everything come down to the producers, how experienced they are to really put the financial structure for that movie or that project in order to have a successful project because if you don't know how to manage the budget, if you don't have the right budget, if you don't have the right script, you don't have the right talent, it can be a disaster.
And the right producers are going to go to guys like Craig. They're not going to
Exactly.
have their friends who, I have a friend of mine that I write a lot of budgets with. He's doing a $15 million movie right now. Sorry about that. And they have, the guy's a billionaire, so it's about his dad, so he doesn't really care. I don't even know the name of it, but um, the director like came from the music, did some music videos, and the producer did some music. Like they're not producers. It's a disaster. Thank God he's the UPM because we trust Kyle. But you want the right producers know where to get the right DPs and cinematographers and
right?
line producers. All those key roles are incredibly important. We have amazing relationships with the unions, with the Teamsters. I mean, my first movie was Hoffa. Jimmy Hoffa Jr. is a friend. Sean O'Brien's a friend of mine. So anyway, I'm going to let the girls finish, but I just wanted to make
Can
that
I just
clear.
add one thing to what Richard
Right.
said? He
yeah,
gave you, like, believe it or not, a 101 on what's actually happening. But you have two different animals. You've got big movies, studio movies, and you've got independents. The big movies, their attitude was, we have a lot of money. If we throw money at it, we're going to make money. Let's get all the most expensive people. That was their mistake. Indies, it's a different thing. They don't have the money to throw at these things. So what they end up doing is they have to spend a lot more time thinking. Look at the movie that won the Academy Award this year. Not an expensive
Or,
movie.
right.
Million.
Okay. And not a lot behind it either. But what happens is they knew that they had an audience and they targeted that audience and they actually got that audience with that film. That you have to do a lot more thinking and you've got now that's not to say that the studio shouldn't be doing the same thing,
yeah,
but this intoxicating thing of having lots of money. Hey, if we spend all this money, this movie's got to be a hit because we're going to just keep throwing money at it. Doesn't work. And
Right.
that's
One
really
bad
what
review, the old
Right.
one bad review, right?
Well, a very simple example is what happened with Ferrari. It's $120
Yeah.
million budget, amazing director, amazing cast, and they make what, $90 million worldwide, and it's like, and it's a
The
it's a
monkey
beautiful
movie, Monkey
movie.
17 or something, 118 million, another disaster. The one that Netflix just did for 320 million, that's a disaster.
yeah. I didn't see any advertising on those though, too. I was like, I didn't even know anything about them. I just saw them come out and that they do.
P&A is an exact, it's not an exact science.
Yeah,
Marketing is really tricky, man.
yeah,
Like
Yeah.
you got to have really guys that really understand that terrain and can do fine marketing plans for P&A that are really nimble and agile. So if you're not doing well over here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you can shift some assets over there where you can buck it up. I mean, we've seen some really intelligent stuff coming along, but they just didn't apply it. But they got too, oh, that's too much work. We're almost done. Let's just see
yeah,
what happens.
yeah, yeah.
But
We're kind of holding it this.
there's right ways and wrong ways on that side too. Look at De Niro's last movie, Auto Nights, right? 40 million. This is the
Yeah, I know. You would have
complete
thought.
loss,
Yeah,
complete loss. And Irwin Winkler, they just went to the well one too many times. No one's wants to see that.
yeah. No, I completely agree. I know
Um,
we're coming up on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, just going back, I think the biggest thing I see as a blow is how people just do P&A wrong. They either overestimate it, underestimate it, and it just
Yeah,
doesn't deliver it doesn't reach the audience it needs to reach to get to the theaters. And I think I've seen that that issue more than I've seen like a bad indie film come out on screen. That I've seen like where people don't even know something's out or you didn't see the advertising and I think that's something that why we talk about pre-sales, when we think about distribution, even if we don't have distribution in place when we're looking at a package from early on, is because you have to see if it just makes sense to take it out to the audience at that budget. Is there a reality here? And I think that's where people um, tend to think about last minute. There's a lot of producers that think about distribution after they finish the movie, which is crazy to us because that's not how we were
Craig's
taught.
like shaking his head.
I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
something, a lot of movies. There was a period which you all probably remember where all people thought, well, I'll make my movie, I just get it made, and then I'll go to the film festivals just
Right.
late and make
And that'll
lots of
end all
money.
my problems.
And then what happened is all these buyers, they thought, you know something? This guy's with his hat out in his hand, and they've spent all this money, and the money's going up because they still owe the money, and they're paying the interest on the money,
Right.
and they would offer them almost nothing, and they'd have to
Right.
take it because otherwise they had an expensive home movie that no one was ever going to see.
Right.
And that went on for after Sling Blade, believe it or not, is the movie
Right.
that started it. They thought, oh, do that, and you make a
Right.
fortune. But
Right.
remember, Miramax bought that, and they put a whole
Right.
bunch of money behind it, but they never tell you that.
No,
Right.
no, they don't. And yeah, everybody's still living the glory days of the Tarantino. I mean, that was a long time ago now. If we look back, and no disrespect to that, I'm a fan of theirs, but it's 2025. Things have moved in different film festivals. I have a love-hate relationship with them. There's about 10 of them, maybe, that are worth going to. Otherwise, no one cares if you won the Ron Newcomb, Virginia Film Festival. Nobody cares. That doesn't move the
Right.
needle.
I
So
come to you.
good. I'm gonna put you in the film festival, Craig. Um, so we're kind of coming up on time, and I have two final questions. The one being, I'm a big reader. I would love if do you all have any recommendations of books or even any video series or any type of training that if the audience as a filmmaker that's out there is listening to this, any nuggets that you would say, hey, this is something you should consider: a technology, a website, a video, a book.
So I don't add any value there. I have sourced more than 7,000 film packages. I have never read a script in my life. And if I did, I would not add any value to it. But that's why I rely on Christy and Katya
Exactly.
initially.
You got
And
you
then
got
it
to take
comes up to, yep, I've never read a script and I never will because what my opinion has so little meaning. I look at life from a way different lens.
yeah,
But
you're on the
Craig and
business
they
side.
might have. I just think that's just somebody's opinion. You really need to surround yourself with experienced people and listen when they talk. I think
Yeah.
there's no real guide to this. Like Penny always used to say, right, Craig? Penny,
Yep.
because I knew Penny forever too. Penny always used to say, "We don't know nothing," and that was Penny Marshall, right?
Yep.
So
It doesn't have like, a specific, a blueprint that you have to follow because every single project is different. And,
right,
every day the industry is changing. Everything is like, so it's what was amazing new yesterday, today is like, the dinosaurs for us. So it's always changing. So it's kind of really hard to pinpoint and suggest something when, even ourselves are, adapting to the changes every day.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we keep up on that. We pay attention to all those industry shifts, those paradigm shifts, those viewing habits. We pay incredibly close attention to that, and a lot of people don't. And I think that's a big mistake. And I think a lot of people are just out of touch with what works and what doesn't. And
And I
and you should surround yourself. Go on.
and
I'll add one comment to it. One of the greatest writers I ever worked with, I won't give you his name, but what he said to me one time, he said, I said, how do you come up with this stuff? He goes, well, what I try to do is I always try to think not present, but the future, even in phrases, come up with them because what you're writing about right now, by the time the movie comes out a year from now, it's almost going to be old. And I
Yeah.
said, I never thought of it that way. And he was right. He said, you've got to take it into the future so that way it's current when it comes out. I never thought of it until he told me that.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's true.
word.
That's a great suggestion.
That's a great suggestion. I just wanted to add in, when Richard was talking about us always keeping up to date with the latest trends, the industry shifts, whatever. And that's all, I can't give you a specific book or a specific podcast to go look. That's all your own research. That's all your
Ron
own
Newcomb
time.
one now
You
because we
have to
just
go.
said that.
Yeah, yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like
Right.
you have
Listen
to
to
kind
this.
You have to do that, you have to, listen to people, whoever's out in the festivals, whoever's seeing what's going on live on the ground, see what's going on. Because as we see, the industry has been shifting every few months now, where back then it shifted every like 5, 6 years, and now it's a completely different ball game. But do your own research too. I think it's always get information from different angles so you have a clear picture of what's going on. Always just from wherever you can get it from. That's
Hollywood Reporter always have some, articles out there about what's happened to the
Yeah.
industry. So you can guide yourself through to the
Yeah.
outlets out there that is talking about what's happening. So then you can have a vision, what's changing, what's hasn't changed. But there are some, outlets out there that you can guide.
Variety
And
No
Ron
Intelligence.
Newcomb
TMZ,
hosts
no
podcasts.
TMZ. TMZ doesn't
No,
work.
not that. Yeah, I know. Variety Intelligence has great
Yeah,
for
TMZ
people
doesn't
that
work.
subscribe there, but there's also a lot of reports that are like kind of not great. So you have to be able to distinguish, what's the quality versus the kind of just talking.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
there's an email list that I'm on. It's called the dailies, and it kind of gives you a summation of
Yeah.
what's going on, and it gives you a cross, it pulls in from all of them, Hollywood Reporter, etc. But well, awesome. Any other potential final words, final comments as we wind down? Final thoughts?
Um,
We covered a
I'm
lot of ground here.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was great. I really appreciate you having us on. I usually, I never did interviews for my clients. I did one interview with Rolling Stone with a friend of mine for Michael Jackson over the Beatles catalog, but I didn't let him use my name, so I never really did interviews. And Katya and Christy have encouraged me to do more podcasts and interviews and stuff.
Awesome.
And I think that with our unique perspective on this and our
Oh, yeah.
our bigger partners' backgrounds in so many films and Craig's background, I think we offer some great insight to
Oh,
new
absolutely.
people trying to navigate this terrain. And I think it's really important. I had fantastic mentors and people that never should have talked to me, and they did. And one of them was an incredibly powerful lawyer in Beverly Hills. And one day he sat with me and he said, "You know what? When you're at my point in life, I want you to never forget this. I never, it was over a boxer that I was managing, and he said, you know, make sure you give back." And I never forgot that. He died shortly after that, and
Mm.
he was an incredible man. His name was Leon Pizzanti. He was Schwarzenegger's attorney, Milton
Wow.
Berle's attorney.
Wow.
He was Julio Cesar Chavez's attorney, the
Oh,
fighter. My guy was a former lightweight champ, Livingstone Bramble. Was trying to make this fight, so I kept bugging him. I wouldn't, and he had extricated him from Don King, and I just kept bugging this guy. And finally, he just kind of took me under his wing and changed my life. So, it's a
awesome.
good idea to listen to people that have been doing this for a long time and have been
Yeah.
successful at it.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I definitely appreciate that perspective. At 52, I found myself, I used to be the youngest person in the room, and then suddenly I became like, holy cow, that I'm the mentor role now. I'm the guide in the hero's journey. I'm the guide. So I'm trying to help these filmmakers along the way, and definitely
That's
appreciate
awesome.
your perspective on that. I want to say thank you so much to you all for joining. Thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on the channel just to let us know you're out there. It also helps the channel. But I believe we're good to go to conclude with our
Thanks so much.
discussion with the G to E family. And just remember out there that nothing is wasted. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, Ron.